Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of Maydaysan Tries to Teach Japanese. And with this series, I'm going to make it Patreon exclusive for those of you who want to actually kind of learn Japanese and kind of figure out the way of how to actually learn a language or actually learn Japanese and how I've been able to really understand Japanese and learn it in a different way because and this video is gonna be for, or this course rather is gonna be for those of you who are a little bit more creative, aren't really good at rote memory or just memorizing things and just trying to piece things just logically, just like this goes here and just memorizing it like that. And kind of why I think, and not to toot my own horn, why I think I was able to grasp the language a lot easier was because I was able to use my imagination. And I think if for those of you who are creative people or have big imaginations and likes telling stories and stuff, this is going to be a great way for you to really understand not how Japanese works, but why Japanese works, if that makes any sense. And of course, some of this content is gonna bleed over into Genki books and stuff like that. And probably the main book I'm probably gonna be following is probably gonna be Take Him, and because that's kind of the philosophy that really opened up my mind and really kind of unlocked everything for me of just how to understand Japanese. And I think one of the reasons why I was doing better than the other, students in my class when I was studying Japanese in university is because, I was trying to understand the function of a particle, or trying to understand why, why we would put this here rather than when do I put this here or how do I make a sentence, right? And kind of the big thing was like, uh, not only being able to express yourself in English, but to be able to express yourself in Japanese and think in Japanese and understand why Japanese people think that way and why they think, certain things and why it makes sense to them to say that. Because if you were to translate something in Japanese to English, it's not always going to be the direct translation, which is, quite literally a little bit crazy, but you can use those literal translations to understand the mindset and the thinking of Japanese people and why they think that way. And a lot of it has to do with their history, a lot of it has to do with culture and stuff like that. And what I'd like to do is I like to imagine things and I like to imagine stories, even if they're not true or not, using mnemonics, using these stories to pull information from your head, pull ideas from your head to help you memorize something and put a meaning to something. Now, you might have heard of this from like, what is that? Remembering the kanji from Heisig. It's kind of like the same thing, but it's for grammar and it's for the language as a whole and why something is. And this may not be for absolute beginners. I would probably say this course is more for like people who have kind of started and kind of gotten a little bit of the basics down, and now you're just trying to really kind of push yourself from kind of intermediate, or from novice to intermediate, or intermediate to whatever. So you have to have some sort of basis to kind of understand what I'm saying today. But that's not to say I'm not going to try to make some content for absolute beginners. I kind of just honestly, I kind of just wanted to start making this because if I didn't start, I would never start. So I need to just start doing it. So, sorry, my laundry's going on in the back right now, so you might hear that. But anyway, so what I wanted to do today is kind of just start with getting the mindset and understanding the mindset behind how Japanese people think and how you can start creating stories by understanding the culture, the history, and basically imagining what it was like for an ancient Japanese person to invent such a word, right? As the same way as modern Japanese people create words out of English, for Japanese English, there was the same reason why they took Chinese characters and why they chose them and why why they say different things. That doesn't really make sense in the modern world because it was different for them back then. Whether or not it's true or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're creating that connection for yourself and being able to understand why it happens. It's almost like math rather than how do I do something, but why do I do something. So we got our little pen here. We got a little pen here and a little brush, hopefully. Yes, so let's get rid of this. Yeah, like that looks good, right? That's good. Okay, so what I wanted to do today is kind of, and I've done this before on a stream, like way before, but the best way for you to understand this is to understand like kanji and stuff like that. But today we're gonna make it a little easier. So what I want to show you today is understanding how Japanese people think. How Japanese people think. Okay? And why it's different and why you need to understand this. So let's zoom in here so I have a lot more space. So let's say with the first thing here. The easiest way for you to understand how a Japanese person thinks and how you can take this idea of what were they thinking when they made this word? And how you can apply it to other pieces of grammar and other pieces of verbs and other things you don't understand by creating a story, by creating something. So basically, what you can do is we can start off with the best example is a mosquito. So if I draw a mosquito like this, that's a little too close, huh? Pixels ain't it. The pixels ain't it, chief. So let's draw a mosquito of, I guess it looks like this, right? Mosquito looks like this, right? So in English, what we say for mosquito is I got bit by a mosquito. I got bitten, or I was bitten by a mosquito, right? I was bitten by a mosquito. And basically, whether this is true or not, it doesn't matter. Let's imagine, okay, this is English, and this is the Western world, okay? So the Western world is full of technology. They got science, they got medical, they all have that fun stuff. Obviously, probably stuff from other, cultures and stuff. But let's just imagine in this imaginary world that we're trying to think. The Western people who invented English were like, we understand science. So if we were to look at this mosquito up close, we understand that this piece here is actually a mouth. This is actually a mouth, okay? This is actually a mouth. So we know it has teeth, and we know that we will get bitten just like we would a dog, right? Just like we would a dog. So we understand as Western people in our imaginary world, we imagine in our imaginary world that we get bitten by a mosquito. We get bitten by a mosquito, right? Because that's how we understand, science in this imaginary world. Now let's go to the Japanese, and if I were to just make a new one here, if we go to the Japanese and we imagine them, okay, we got a Japanese guy. He's a farmer. He doesn't really know what's going on. He doesn't really know about the outside world. Sakoku's in place. He doesn't really know what's going on. He doesn't know science. He's going to learn from the Dutch and stuff like that. So let's say he encounters a mosquito. And there's a pretty big mosquito. But anyway. Let's say he encounters a mosquito. And lo and behold, the mosquito's mouth looks a hell of a lot like a sword, doesn't it? Looks a hell of a lot like a sword. Well, I guess it would be a katana because it curves. Just like the mosquito's mouth curves, right? It looks a lot like a sword. So with knives and with sharp objects, Japanese people believe they say the word sasu. Okay? Sasu. Just right here. Sasu. Which means to stab. To stab, because the mosquito's mouth looks like a sword. Right? And these Japanese people are like, oh my god, it's like a sword wielding bug. So I was stabbed by a bug. So ka, which is mosquito, ka ni sa sareta, which is the passive form of I was stabbed by a mosquito. And that's the way of thinking, if you think about it. So in the Western world, we know, in this imaginary world, remember, the Western world, we understand that mosquitoes have mouths because we have science and we have microscopes and we can see that they have mouths, so we are bitten by a mosquito. But let's say this primitive Japanese person who hasn't been exposed to any of the science in our imaginary world, that'll be true or not, probably is, maybe. I'm not a historian. They were stabbed by a mosquito because they took a look at it like, oh, that looks like a katana. That looks like a katana like freaking Tanaka-san has over on his rice field, right? So like, if you think about this, Japanese people already have this different way of thinking. They don't know that it's bitten. They think that they're being stabbed by something, and even to this day they say that. Here's another cool one that I recently learned is, kakachao, like, to kakaru is to get sick, or to get a sickness or something like that, or to catch something. So let's say you get a kaze, which is a kaze. How do you write is that again? Kaze o kakaru, kaze o hita, kaze o kakaru. You don't say that, okay? We don't say we get a sickness. Let's just imagine it. We'd say like influenza. Let's say influenza o kakaru. To catch influenza. Now, let's imagine again in our modern and ancient whatever world, that the Japanese people didn't know what influenza was back in freaking Edo, way before, freaking way back. Influenza wasn't a thing. Nobody knew what that was because we didn't have microscopes. We all just thought influenza and the cold were the same thing. So let's say, thanks to modern science and modern Japanese, the Japanese now use kakaru, and they actually do. They use kakaru for every other kind of sickness except the cold. Except the cold, they use influenza. They go coronavirus, whatever is always gonna be kakaru. Nani nani kakatta. Like, I caught something, this modern virus. But why is it that kaze, the common cold, uses hiku? So you don't say kaze o kakaru. You say kaze o hita, kaze kakatta. So if I write that again, kaze o hita, which is actually, can I still write this thing? This, yes, kaze o hita. Now this kanji here, if you look at it, this is the same thing. This kanji here means to pull something, to literally pull something. Now, it's an interesting story that my one of my colleagues told me. So the ancient Japanese, they believed that there was like something, I forgot what it's called, like akuji or something. There was like I forgot what it's called. It's called bad energy. There's bad energy in the world, right? So let's just imagine there's a samurai guy and whatever. There's bad energy in the world. And basically this cloud of bad energy, if you get sick, okay, if you get sick with the common cold, you basically pull from this energy. So this energy is engulfing you, and your body is basically pulling it in. It's pulling in this energy, this bad cold energy. So that is why, in ancient times, superstitions, they believed that this bad energy, I think it's called akuji, I forgot what it calls. Guys, this is off the cuff. Man, this bad energy that they get is kind of sucked into their body. So their body, in a passive sense, is pulling this bad energy in, which is why kaze o hita, and kaze, like a cold, is, let's say, imagine in a simple world, there's just good and there's bad. You're good if you're healthy, bad energy is if you're sick. So if you got sick, you had the cold, wouldn't even know what it was, that's bad energy. Whether or not this is true or not, it doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're imagining, and we're attaching reasoning, we're attaching logic, real world logic, not real in an ironic sense, to an abstract idea that it's kind of hard for us to understand as creative people. So if you basically, with these two examples, with the mosquito stabbing people versus in the Western world in English, let's say English, we imagine that they bite people, and that the cold is something you catch rather than something you pull into via bad energy due to cultural values in the past. You can begin to understand how Japanese people think, even modern Japanese people to this day, because it's inherited through the language. You can understand how they think, and you'll begin to understand, and when you start learning Japanese farther down the line, that there are more and more verbs that you kind of find a little bit hard to understand. It's like, why would they even say that? And that's your job now, to make a story and make something, make logic, make something for yourself to understand. This doesn't only work with kanji. You probably say, "Oh, this is like wani kani or whatever." It is, but it's for grammar and it's for understanding language. And I promise you, it's going to become so much easier for you to understand the language and be able to apply it to different things and become more culturally enriched and understand the language at a deeper level. And I think that's really important for you to understand. So that's really all I'm gonna say. So imagine a story. Imagine something for you to pull from your mind that you can associate an abstract concept with something concrete for you. Um, you know, draw pictures or do something. That's basically what it is, but for grammar. So hopefully with this course, I can teach you some other grammar types, and then we can use the same kind of concept, literal Japanese or, literal translations or imaginative translations in this case, to help you understand difficult grammar points. And we're going to be using a number of different textbooks, hopefully, and I'll hopefully be making these once a week or something. I don't know. But anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. This is the very first time I'm doing this, so I'm not even sure if this is going to even go well. I think at the time of this recording, there's only 4 patrons, so hope you guys enjoy. And maybe I'll post a preview of this for everyone else who wants to learn Japanese. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next lesson. Peace.